Hello everyone, I'm a living man and a living soul, and I present myself to you today in person as King Regis Lucius I. I am both the creator and the head of state of a new country, a new state, which is called the state of Taos. Now it's not every day that you hear about a new state, we'll have to give that, but there are reasons why and how we got from there to here. And in this overview video, we'll kind of touch a bit of the overview, and in the future we'll probably have more videos where we'll look into detail or in depth into each of the themes that we'll just be kind of touching quickly today. So what's happening is in the world, tyranny is increasing extremely quickly, is growing. Now, in the older days, the states, countries or states that used to be known for being fair, for being just, recently are turning to injustice and persecution to justify their commercial goals. That's a serious issue in itself, because what's happening is it's happening worldwide at the same time. So you have a lot of states that are kind of coordinating in increasing tyranny, or increasing the darkness is increasing worldwide simultaneously. This is a big issue. Now, one of the issues that we have is that in our days is countries have grown probably too big. Now, in the older days, when you had a nation, was a village, or a certain small amount of people, it was not necessarily huge. But nowadays we live in times where countries are millions. Hundreds of millions are not so rare, and you have more. Now what happens with the problem with that is that a state, a single state, will usually have a unified vision, a unified goal of where it wants to go. But with a large amount of population, a large population, what will happen is, well, of course you're going to have a certain portion of the population which will be pleased with the directions of the state. That's fine. But inevitably you're going to have others that will not be represented in those choices, in those decisions. Now, we could say that historically then it wasn't so bad if some people were not represented in where the state was headed, because as long as they were respected in their dissension of this direction, well, it was fine. They would just, take a back seat to the whole thing and stop. But what's happening more and more nowadays is that the states are beginning to punish people, their own citizens, for thinking differently, or thinking or thinking how the state does not want you to think. Now, one of the concepts that is being pushed a lot in our times is the concept of diversity and inclusion. Hey, diversity is good. We need diversity. Yeah, that's fine for states within a very narrow spectrum of choices. Oh, no, diversity is great. Oh, yes, we need neurodiversity. Yeah, but if you come out of that narrow spectrum of thought, and you're diverse in your thinking, not the way they want you, all of a sudden diversity doesn't get respected anymore. You're a dissenter, you're a troublemaker, and then they're going to persecute for that. Increasingly, citizens are being persecuted for thinking differently or wanting to live differently than the unified vision of the state, which is more and more tending to force a single way to live on people. Now that's a big issue. You also have the courts of justice, and more they are becoming courts of injustice. Now the thing about courts is, at least in concept and historically, is courts would be fair and impartial, and the job of the court would be to verify the facts from all sides and then adjudicate based on the results of the facts, no matter where the decision is. But what's happening in our times is not so much that anymore, but rather the state has a predetermined goal that it wants to achieve. And then the courts are there to justify the decision of the state. And if the courts were to apply fairness and justice, but the result would be not what the state wants, then the courts corrupt it and deny justice. Now, I've seen that with my own eyes, and I'll get back to that. Through all this increasing persecution of the state worldwide is that good people are being hurt simply for wanting to live differently or for believing different beliefs than the state. Some people are arrested and sent to prison for crimes that are not crimes. What's next? Gulags? Work camps? It's been seen before. You've got good families being destroyed. Kids kidnapped by states for no reason at all other than maybe they homeschool and do not want to teach what the state wants them to learn. That's against freedom. It's happening more and more. Human rights are being denied. Now you have to think of that. Now human rights are essential. The basics, human and personal rights are the basics of the very structure of justice. And you have international treaties enforced by the United Nations and other organizations, and big countries are legally bound, signatory to these treaties, and are legally bound to implement these rights. And yet in courts, they deny these rights, even if they must implement it, because it may not give what they want. Justified persecution. Governments are supposed, yes, they work for the state, but part of the governments is also to work for the citizens. The citizens should be represented in their governments, and the government should work for the people. But more and more what's happening is you have international interests, foreign interests, powerful foreign interests. And they manage to infiltrate government, and through that corruption, the governments start working against the citizens, but rather for the interests of these international organizations. That's happening nearly everywhere right now, and we're seeing the effects very quickly in our times. But the thing is that the citizens of a state have the right to be represented by the state. They have the right to live in a state which represents them. But right now, they're not. There's nowhere. Now, before we go any further, I'll mention that everything I just said, I went through it. I've lived it. Now, long story made very short. Was a happy family. We were just in the process of moving between two houses. The RCMP, which is the police of a foreign state, the police of Canada, working on wrong information, thinking they were going to do a big hit of something that didn't even exist, came to our house and searched the entire house, ruined our lives here. But not only that, is when they saw that there were children in the house, they called CPS, or Child Protection Services. Now these foreign agents came, kidnapped our children. The horror that ensued is hard to explain. Now the thing is, the way it works is the state, once they take children like this, they don't care about justice or truth or anything. No. It's all about submission and servitude into their authority. Now, what happened is I knew law, or I was learning law, so I had a bit of better understanding of law than the average people. So when I went to these courts, I went into these courts and I requested that my rights be respected, the human and personal rights that should be offered. Well, knowing and asking for my rights made me enemy number one. CPS, corrupt completely. I can't see my children just because really I'm only asking for justice in courts. But worst is, because I was right, if the courts were to really offer the rights, as they should, and review the facts and the law, the results would be that they would have to admit that they do not have jurisdiction on these matters and would have to abdicate. But the thing is, the state, although it should abdicate, does not want to. And in order to maintain these cases, maintain its artificial power, which it doesn't have authority, the state and the courts have resulted to corruption, to fraud. Now, I went to multiple courts, superior courts of Quebec, the Federal Court of Canada, multiple times, requested writ of certiorari, which is also known as judicial review, should have been given, was never offered. The courts use summary rejection, corruption of law, fraud, always to reject it because they know that if they were just to review the law, they would have to abdicate. Now that's corruption to enforce servitude. And now there's threats of violence, kidnapping our children, complete duress. The thing is, what they wanted me to do was to submit in servitude like a slave. That's what they want. But the thing is, I will not agree to that. Hear me out, I won't. I do not agree to live in a world or to help create a world where tyranny, persecution, injustice, unfairness, evil, darkness wins. But each time we agree to this and we submit, we make them win. So I said no, and this is why I've been fighting for more than a year now. I've suffered. The way I see it is I've been forged in the fires of hell. But here's the thing. Because I do not agree to submit, but rather I fight through the ashes of the fires of hell, through the pain and the blisters, something was reborn. Through this weird scenario of complexity of cases and extremely long interaction, I managed to separate myself from the states of Quebec and Canada, and every other state for that matter, and I managed to solidify my sovereignty. Complicated, but I managed to get it with the accord of the King, Crown and Right of Canada, and they unwittingly or did not allow that to happen and acknowledged it. And by getting the sovereignty, I could reborn myself or rebirth myself as a king, which I now am King Regis Lucius I. And now as a sovereign king, I now had the authority to create a sovereign state. And through that, now with the sovereign state, we benefit from the power of international law. So now that changes everything, and that is the core and the heart of my battle. With the state, we are equal to every other state in international law. Now that's essential, because now we have the legal protection, the legal shield of the state, which allows us to live by our own rules and principles and laws. Now we can make a state that lives by the principal tenets of justice and freedom, the laws of God, the essential tenets of common law. We can live, and that state is Taos. So as a phoenix reborn out of the fires of hell, we have Taos now, and now we're building it to ensure that our children will have a proper future. So, as we said, for citizens of current states, now the world over, now when your state becomes tyrannical, you don't have that many options. So it used to be that when a state became, you could just immigrate, take refuge in another state. But what's happening nowadays is that every single state is turning tyrannical at the same rate. They're all coordinating, possibly, with the same foreign agencies that are interfering with the governments. But there certainly are a coordinated darkening in the world. So citizens of these states have no recourse. Even if they move to another state, that same state will be just as tyrannical within 2-3 years. It's all coordinated. So citizens are stuck and they don't know what to do. So the only other actions that they know that they can do is to engage in insurrection, to become seditious. And I'm sorry to say, but that's the actually worst solution ever. Now, you have to understand that governments of states, they love insurrection. That's the solution they want you to think that you have, because insurrection automatically allows them, because it's basically a revolt against your very own authority, so it gives them the right and justification to squash it, to crush it to the ground. An example is in Canada, they had last year the Freedom Convoy. Well, that was insurrection, and what happened? They got crushed from A to Z. The state had barely lifted a finger, and it all just got brought to nothing. There's no winning within their own state through insurrection. Now, the Holy Scriptures, the New Testament, Jesus tells us that who will live by the sword will perish by the sword. And that's extremely important. Violence has never been an option. And they love to promote violence, but it's not an option, because violence begets violence. Now, if it's done by citizens, it's insurrection. If it's done by foreigners, it's a declaration of war. Now, if we think about it, the major countries of the world are extremely well armed. I mean, we have weapons. They have weapons nowadays that can blow up the earth many times over with nuclear weapons and whatever else that they have. terrible weapons. Violence is not the answer. Never was, never will be. Taos does not engage in that. Taos is neutral and peaceful. So Taos engages the world in international law. So it respects the foreign states, every single one of them. Taos is neutral, considers them as allies and friends, and will work with them through diplomacy and, of course, through international law. But the fact remains that in international law, every sovereign state is sovereign within its own territory, which means that Taos has the right to exist and to grow and to be prospered within its own territory. Now that's important. So the people that feel that they have no other options, in many ways, in our days, it's true, they are stuck until Taos. Now they have an option. The right answer is to immigrate to a proper state, considering that there's so few nowadays. Immigrate to Taos. That's the solution. Gain citizenship of Taos, you gain the protection of the state. And that's what it means. An example. Let's give a hypothetical example. It works for every country on earth, every state on earth, but I'll just use an example here. We'll take Canada as an example. So, if you have a citizen of Canada, is only a citizen of that state. Well, if that citizen is taken to a legal court of Canada, and the courts become corrupt, as I've seen it happen, that person has no recourse. Oh, sure, it might try an appeal, within Canada, these various other options, but if the corruption is ultimate within the state, there's no way out. And it happens because I've witnessed it. Then that person has nearly no other recourse. Well, sure, there may be some international recourses with United Nations, but that is extremely complicated, it's hard to do, and what if the United Nations was to also be corrupt? I mean, then there's no way out. So they're stuck. But there is a solution. If that person is either only a citizen of Taos or also a citizen of Taos, well, it creates jurisdiction. Both courts of Taos and of Canada have joint jurisdictions on the matter. So now that citizen, that person, now has protection of the courts of Taos. Except the courts of Taos will be fair, just, implements rights, justice, all the best tenets of justice applied. And the courts of Taos can adjudicate the case, and if Canada is corrupt, the courts of Taos can revert that corruption, and in law, the most just judgment wins. So by international law, the courts of the foreign state must recognize the judgment, and then that person is, depending on the results, possibly freed where it may not have been otherwise. So that's an important aspect of Taos. Now, the dream of Taos is this, as I've mentioned, is I don't agree to allow evil to win. Not in my life. Not me. Others do, obviously. All these corrupt agents from CPS, governments, courts, they're okay with engaging in corruption to justify evil and pain and torture. I do not understand this. I do not agree with this. Not on my watch. So, no, it won't happen. Not on my watch. So I've acted, I've lifted my fist, and I'm going to fight for it. Are you hearing me? I'm fighting. Now, I'm not talking about physical or martial arts fighting, no. But we're talking battle, which means to act and create a solution that will work to bring back the light, the good in this world. To be the counter, or the what's the word here is, to be the antithesis of evil. As evil grows, also must the antithesis. That's what we're doing, because I will not have my life have participated to increase hell in this world. No, it won't. So there we go. I've made my move. I'm now a king, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to lead the good people, and we're going to create a solution for the good people where they will be free, where they will be respected, families will be allowed to grow and within their own beliefs, as long as they don't bother anybody within their own beliefs, they will have a place, a safe place to call home. Now, Tayos cannot interfere with other states, and they won't, they can't. But if other states interfere with Tayos and or its citizens, well then Tayos will restore justice, at least for the citizens of Tayos. But the good people out there, the word will get out. Those who want better, well, move to Tayos, immigrate, become citizens. We have a website, go on the website, read about it, we'll improve over time, everything will be there, and make a choice. Now, citizenship, again, to clarify, you do not have to physically move to the lands of Tayos to become a citizen of Tayos. No. You can remain, you can be on another continent and become a citizen of Tayos. What happens is you become part of the legal territory of the state. So even if you were to be, I don't know, in the lands generally referred to as France, for example, well, you could be a citizen of Tayos and you have the courts of Tayos protecting you. And if a foreign court, say France in this case, takes you in, well, you can call your state, call the embassy, and get protection from the courts, and the courts will assist you and get you out of there. Okay? You could also immigrate to Tayos, and I'll get back to that topic because we have lands to build, we have institution to man, we need officers, we need police officers, we need to man the government. I'll get back to that. So that's the dream of Tayos, is to build a proper state that will be a home for the righteous people. The unrighteous people will not be welcome, but they will never be thrown out by unfair justice, never. Now the righteous people will always be protected. If they're righteous and they live correctly according to the laws of God, the Ten Commandments, for example, which is essentially live and let live. As long as people do not hurt anybody and live within respect of others, they will be respected, they will be protected. Now, criminals will not... Now, remember, we have to say that the freedom is never free. Freedom has never been free. Okay, so we have to understand that freedom comes with serious responsibilities. So the righteous, to live righteously is the cost of freedom. And the unrighteous, the criminals, will not fare well in Tayos at all. Now, this being said, if a criminal is taken into a criminal court, he or she will benefit from a very, very fair, just court with all the human rights required, respected to the T. So a righteous person that is taken to a criminal court by mistake will always be allowed out, because a fair process will always allow the good people out. It will never be like happened to me, never be persecuted unfairly. But if, despite the justice and fairness of the courts, there is a judgment for a crime, and a conviction, well then they'll be very severe, because we cannot allow the unrighteous to take advantage of the freedom of Tayos. So that's one thing. So it really is a state for the righteous, for the good and the just. We'll protect them in that justice and that righteousness. Respect their beliefs and their freedom. Okay, so the name of Tayos comes from a cave in Ecuador, the country of Ecuador. And it's a very special cave. And it's called La Cueva de los Tayos in Spanish. And so here comes the name Tayos. And in Japanese, Tayo also means sun, the sun. So I always thought it's perfectly named because, again, as you have a day that corrupts into darkness, the end of the day, or you have a rebirth the next morning when the sun rises again and shines with the promise of a new day and the heat and the light that it brings. So I think it's perfect for what we're trying to achieve, as Tayos is the antithesis of evil. There is a saying that says that the only thing required for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. Well, there you go. We have to do something. We have to take back our fate in our own hands. Okay, do you hear me? Listen to me. Good cannot win if we do nothing. Is that clear? So we have to do something, And there will be sacrifices. We may have to sacrifice our sofa, our all-comfortable sofa. We may have to let that one go, because if we do not do anything, yes, evil will win. And it's already near midnight, I can tell you, because although a lot of states are already very corrupt, most people don't see it as long as you obey their edicts and their rules. But as soon as you challenge a little bit, you'll see the monster. You will see Godzilla's foot. We're already there. So we need to act. Tayos is at least my take on that, on the acts. I will lead to make sure that the good people have to. Maybe somebody else will, but I'm not going to wait for anybody else to do it. And from what I see, nobody else is doing it. I'm tired. I'm not going to wait for somebody to possibly do it. Most probably won't. Take our fate in our own hands. My family is suffering still, so I'm taking leadership. We're going to manage that ship, and we're going to make something that brings back fairness. Are you hearing me? That's important. But we need you. We need you. I need you. Can't do this alone. The good people have to act. And now Tayos gives us the right and the justification in international law. We have a legal state protecting us. Now, mind you, no violence ever. It's not needed anyways. We're way more powerful by simply doing good, ensuring justice, and acting by international law. Always good. We cannot interfere with other states. So citizens of Tayos never interfere with other states, even if they do things that are questionable, because they have the right to their own choices, just like we have the right to our own choices. It cuts both ways. So, I've mentioned the... So about immigration to Tayos, by the way, is extremely easy. We have a website. You can go on the website, Tayos. You also have Telegram channels. We have a Discord channel. There's also a Twitter, and probably more will come in there. You can come and chat with us. The people of Tayos, the citizens of Tayos, myself, King Regis. You can talk with me and ask questions, or you can send an email. Everything's on the website. You can see that there. And immigration is really an act of self-determination. So when you decide to become a citizen of Tayos, you decide that you do. Hence, on the website, there's an affidavit, and you fill that affidavit, get it notarized, and you send it to the state of Tayos. And if the state agrees, then you become a citizen of Tayos, and that's it, by your own will and intent. Then there's also a second optional step, which is if you decide, it's optional, but if you decide to revoke citizenship of your previous state or states, you can do that too. So it's all going to be on the website, but it's actually extremely easy. And from then, well, in the future, Tayos has driver's license, vehicle registration, passports, and everything else, birth certificates, everything will be given. And then the citizens, they can come home if they want to. They can immigrate back to Tayos, or they can stay abroad as citizens of Tayos. And over time, the state will expand. So that's extremely important. Now, in terms of structure of Tayos, it goes like this, and it's structured in what I believe, and I strongly believe, and I have the ability to defend this belief, that is the best structure for a state, the governments and the courts. Now, there's various government structures that have been tried over history, some more successful than others, and the one that I chose is the one that I believe is the best, that I know of. So Tayos is essentially, well, first of all, there's of course the head of state, king, myself. It's required because it is head of state that grants the sovereignty of the state in international law. So there is a sovereign state, that is sovereign, and the point of the king is to ensure, of course, leadership, but also to ensure that the state will remain, to supervise or oversee, that the state will remain within the edicts and the vision and the principles that prompted its creation, that remains loyal to these principles: justice, fairness, freedom, etc. But other than that, the king will not intervene in the management of the state. The government will be managed by the people, so the government will be a representative republic. It's very important, so it is the citizens who will elect their government. Now, you have two great models related to that. Of course, you have ancient Rome in some of its most glorious days that have a similar model. But you also have, in our days, the United States of America. Now they have a model that I think is very clever, and for that reason, Taos is pretty much modeling itself on that structure. So the representative republic will be built of three branches of government. So you have the legislative, the executive, and of course the judiciary. So the legislative will obviously be the Congress, composed of a Senate and the House of Representatives, all elected by the people. And of course you have the executive, which will be the government, the government itself. The president will be a president, vice president, and everybody else, all the other officers. And the judiciary, and judiciary will be functioning on the following. So the courts of Taos, for the same reasons, is in my opinion established on what is, I think, the best system of law that exists in our times, and it is the English common law. It's the best. Now, first of all, the English common law has everything that is good from the civil systems. So it has nothing to envy to the civil systems. But it is superior in everything that it has that the others do not. Now you have, of course, case law, the unwritten law. That's extremely important. But also that it is more flexible in that it also operates through maxims of law and of equity. And that's essential, that's very important, because maxims of law and equity are inherited from the natural law. Also, we could call it the laws of God. And the maxims, operating by the maxims in common law, is very powerful in ensuring that justice, and it operates within the bounds of justice. And it's much harder in common law to corrupt the law than it is in a civil system. Now, in a civil system, they have these codes, these statutes, and if everything is not codified perfectly, if there's little holes in there, and obviously they voluntarily leave holes or imprecisions, well, then after that, can pretty much do what they want. But in the common law, it's incredibly harder, because again, it applies if the statutes do not have holes. Well, the maxims of law and of equity still apply, the case law still applies. It's near impossible. There's very little wiggle room for the judges to become unfair. And on top of that, Taos will explicitly enforce justice, human rights in its courts. Judges that do not respect it will be severely punished, very severely, because it will be an essential edict, principle of our state. So the courts of equity, criminal courts are also common law. The structure of the courts is on the website, but essentially lower level courts, superior courts of chancery, of course, Supreme Court, courts of appeal of chancery, everything will be there. The state will also have a constitution, a very good constitution for the people. It is not created yet, the constitution, and the reason for that is we're waiting to have more of a critical mass of citizens. So that we can engage a dialogue, and then from there, when we have more people, then the Constitution will be drafted and enacted. I can already predict that it will be very inspired from the Constitution of the United States. We'll probably remove the bad stuff, but definitely the good stuff. Similar, not the same. Of course, we'll adapt to our times and the reality in which we are, but definitely for the people. So we'll review that in the future when we reach a bit more of a critical mass of citizens. So again, a fair state, that's the essential, is a fair and just state, defender of freedom, the antithesis of evil. The point of Taos is for those who will have the, the self-respect, the dignity to realize that they need to live better and elect to move into Taos. Well, these good people they'll deserve to be defended. They deserve to, and Taos will. Other states will do what they have to do. If they become tyrannical and they oppress, it's their right. As unjust as it is their right to do so within their state. But it has to stop at the boundaries of their territory. They cannot invade other territories. So those who are within Taos will be protected from that. Because Taos does not under my watch, will not engage in any such behavior. It will be codified seriously in the very fabric of our state that it is not like that. So Taos will be the place, the house of the just. Other than that, well, Taos has its territory, its lands, and I've mentioned that, of course, one can be a citizen and not really move to the lands of Taos, can stay, and eventually we might claim more lands and more territory, expanded territory. But it can still be on other continents. It's fine. But Taos has its lands in North America at the moment. And, but we have to understand that they are virgin lands. Now, the state of Taos is very young. It was just created. It exists, but it's just created. And there's a lot of work to do to develop it, to build it, to man its institutions, to grow it. And of course, the physical lands have to be created. Right now, a virgin forest. Okay, so today that I'm making this video, we are the 4th, I think the 4th of January 2023. So it's winter in North America. And so in spring, the citizens of Taos, the people that are there, those who want and can, we will reach our lands, and we will begin establishing what I call Camp Zero, or the base camp. Now, this will not be the final place where we may build our town and capital, but it will be a base camp, an easy entry into our lands, because again, it is forested. And from this base camp, citizens of Taos will have a place to go in case of urgency, taking refuge. We can all go to base camp. And from the base camp will serve as our entry point as we make our way inside our lands, and then find the area which will become the main town and eventually the capital of our state, which we will grow. So we have to begin from scratch. So there will be tree cutting, deforestation. We have to make our way and we have to build our land. Everything remains to be built. We have a second chance. We have a second chance. You don't get that every day. We have a second chance. We can build a state the right way, the way the freedom lovers, those who want to be respected in their own beliefs, those who respect others but also want to be respected, those who want to be fair and live by fairness, those who want to live by the laws of God, will have a place to call home and can live forever, protected. So we're going to build our land, but we have a lot of work to do, obviously. So if you're out there, if you feel like it's hopeless, which is many ways it is becoming in other countries and states, and you would like to participate into the building, well, we need you. We need your help. We need your help physically, but also just as a citizen. We need your help. The state will grow by getting more people and people participating. We can't do nothing. We cannot be idle. It's just, I mean, people can be, but we need a core of people that are going to fight, not a physical battle of war, martial, but fighting in the sense of acting, taking actions, participating in the state and the government. And all of this is what's going to build our state. So we have to act. And we have to act now. So go visit our website, and who knows, maybe we'll see you in spring or during the summer. We will need arms, we will need people, and we're going to build Camp Zero, or the base camp. And then it's our home. Now we can go live there, we can live there full time. To start, there won't be any lands allocated, so we're all going to share it, but then we're going to build our way into the lands, and there we're going to build and start building our state, allocating lands to people, and build our final homes where we're going to live forever, or long term. Start building. So there you go. It's time to act. Roll up your sleeves, but we do need you. Look it up. So thank you very much. This was an overview video. The website again will give more detail as we elaborate over time. May probably do more videos that will look into each theme in more detail. And then depending on what the public mentions or what we discuss in the various groups, then we'll elaborate on that. But we thank you very much for your attention. We look forward to at least talking to you, and maybe someday you'll be with us in our new state. Thank you very much.